The new King of the Hill revival series has been released on Hulu, and so far the reaction to it has been pretty positive. Many longtime fans of the show feel the writing is pretty much akin to what we saw in the original series, but they also have some issues with the animation for it because whereas the original was animated through 2D hand-drawn means, this new one is done through a more newer digital technology, and that's something a lot of people don't like, but according to the new showrunner, they really have no choice on the matter. But before we get into all that, if you're new to the channel here, make sure you click that subscribe button. And if you can, leave a comment and hit the like button too, because it helps out with the channel. So I have this article right here from Bounding Into Comics talking about this interview with the showrunner. And here's the headline. King of the Hill revival boss says it's impossible to recreate originals animation style because tools don't exist anymore. And a lot of people are probably thinking, it's like, what tools don't exist anymore? Pencils and paper. I mean, that's what it takes to make hand-drawn animation, right? It's like, well, yeah, it seems kind of funny when you think of it that way, but there's a little bit more to it than just that. While the Disney-produced King of the Hill revival may have delivered in terms of its writing, its animation was just as disappointingly stiff and lifeless as early previews had suggested. And while many fans were hoping it would bear something akin to the original's hand-drawn aesthetic, showrunner Saladin K. Patterson says that such a goal is near impossible in the current era. So scrolling further down, it kind of gets into this interview that he had with the Hollywood Reporter, and this is what he said when asked about the animation style of the new series. Patterson bluntly admitted to his hosts that said changes was an unfortunate side effect of the industry move towards cost-cutting and digitalization. So a lot of people might hear that and think like, okay, so see, this is just cheap animation. That's why it doesn't look as good as the original. It's like, and while on broadly, you could probably say that there's a little bit more to it than that. I do want to address the art because that's probably been the most universal thing that has shook the new audience when they saw the previews and things like that, that the animation looks so different. And yes, it's different because they're going from hand-drawn to digitalization. And while you can do some things to replicate the hand-drawn look in digital animation, you can never quite capture it the exact same way. And it seems like they weren't really even trying to do that. They were just trying to capture broadly the look and feel of King of the Hill without trying to necessarily replicate exactly how it looked. I get it, and I get why people who want to revisit the show may be taken aback a little. The new animation style is all digital now, but the truth of the matter is it is impossible to do the show now the way it was done then. The hand-drawn animation, the watercolors, those don't exist anymore. If they exist, they certainly don't exist at a cost where you can do a TV show. So it has to be adapted, and so we updated it with the current style and makeup of animation that animated shows do. So just kind of using the technology that's available at the time, because it's not as if there's no one out there who can actually replicate the hand-drawn stuff. But the problem is when it comes to mini shows like this, it is significantly more expensive to produce hand-drawn animation than it is to produce just digital stuff. Not only that, but there are also certain affordances with using digital animation, such as you can revise stuff and edit things once you've already created the assets. You have them available to replicate them, as opposed to every new frame has to be hand-drawn. And if you need to edit a scene or change some stuff around, it takes a lot more work than it does with digital technology. So if they plan on continuing this series, which they are doing, it is more beneficial for them in the long term to actually just animate it through digital technology, even if some people don't necessarily like the look of it. I admitted it does look different and maybe jarring to some people. I just want to put it out there that even though it's updated, we still went and tried to give it an age-old look to make it feel more like the color palette and the landscape of the original, more so than other shows. We certainly went through a lot of back and forth with the background and designers and things like that to make our colors feel closer to what they felt in the original, and the tones and things the most that we could. So it looks like they tried to replicate it a little bit, but again, kind of going back to what I was saying, even if you're trying to do that when you're using digital technology, you just don't have that human touch in it in order to make it truly feel like it's done through hand as opposed to done with a computer. And this isn't me trying to just bash on digital animators, because I understand that there's a skill set involved with that and there is an artistry to that, but there is a certain aesthetic that's delivered through hand-drawn means as opposed to through digital means. And even if you're trying to replicate that, it just doesn't quite work. I mean, just try to, even if you have something like a tablet and you're trying to draw something digitally and you try to draw the exact same thing on piece of paper with the pencil, it's not going to look exactly the same no matter how much you try to fiddle around with it. So that's pretty much what we're facing when it comes to this new King of the Hill. And while not specifically related to its visuals, Patterson also noted that in addition to animation budget restrictions, the script for King of the Hill's new season also had the whether its script being picked according to the pearl clutching sensitivities of Disney executives. Now, from what I heard, there's really not a whole lot of issues with the writing of it. I mean, some people have some issues with it, but for the most part, people who are fans of the original series actually think this new one captured it quite well. That being said, Hulu still made us go through and pull out all the F-bombs because they don't want the TVMA label, and it's fine, totally get it. I actually personally don't think that would really fit within King of the Hill to have a bunch of F-bombs and stuff. So I think it's probably for the best that they got rid of things like that. But this kind of goes back to what I was saying previously about how it's easier to edit stuff out. From the script, that seems like they were doing some things that they probably shouldn't have been investing in to begin with, and then they had to go back and revise it, and as a result that probably shifted some of the animation, which it's easier to do it when it's digital. But if they would have just had a proper script to begin with, then they wouldn't have had to worry about that if they were just doing it through hand-drawn means. But this could also be chalked up to them kind of bringing back the show in a new age. So they were trying to see what they can and cannot do. Also working with a new company like Disney, whereas previously it was just Fox. So I can understand them experimenting a little bit, but I think it's probably best that it is more going back to how the original one was, as opposed to trying to necessarily update it and make it a little bit more edgy. It is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of shows pushing the envelope in that way anyway. So it wasn't a big loss. If it wasn't a big loss, then you probably shouldn't have done it. But it was ironic, especially considering, like you said, the history of the show being on Fox, where the whole purpose was to try to push the envelope as much as you could. I mean, it wasn't really like that when it came to King of the Hill, but they pushed the envelope in a way that, as far as commentary and other things like that goes, but they were still true to the original. But what do I think about this idea that they can't really bring back 2D animation? I understand that. From a business standpoint, I can understand just asking, is the juice worth to squeeze? Because could they actually bring on some people to do 2D hand-drawn animation? Yeah, I'm sure they could. The problem is a lot of schools that teach animation and a lot of people coming up in animation nowadays aren't taught how to do it through the hand-drawn method. I mean, it even comes to like that with many forms in the entertainment industry. Just look at editing, for instance. There's very few new editors out there who just know how to actually splice film reels together, as opposed to just using programs like Premiere and Final Cut. That's pretty much where the industry has shifted to digital editing, because that technology is available and people are learning on that. So everything has kind of shifted in that direction, and the analog video editing has kind of gone away. It's the same when it comes to animation. The only people who are really masters of 2D hand-drawn animation, and to the level that they could actually animate a series like King of the Hill, are basically people who are old and at the edge of retirement, if not actually retired. And to try to make a new show like that would require a lot of training for new people and paying a lot of money to bring back a lot of those old timers. And while some people might actually like the idea of doing that, the studio was looking at this and thinking like, okay, this will probably bring in a few more people to the show if we were able to do that, but would it be so significant enough that it would justify the cost increase of doing it that way? Or should we just stick to where the industry is going, which is something that has all these other affordances? One drawback in that the aesthetic isn't as pleasing, but it has all these other affordances and it's cheaper. Should we just think about that and devote more of our resources towards writing, as opposed to cut back on some of the funding elsewhere and devote it more to the animation? It really isn't an easy question to ask, and I can see both sides of the equation. I would like to have my cake and eat it too, where you have basically the exact same show that we got in the past, look and everything, but we're just not getting that. So, and if you have to choose between the animation and the writing and everything else, what would you choose? Because it seems like despite the animation, audiences still enjoy this. You can see Rotten Tomatoes, it's very positive. Similar over on Metacritic for the season. So it really does feel like audiences enjoy this show. And is that telling the studio that they can just do cheap animation? No, I think it's just telling the studio that as long as they're faithful to the original as far as the writing and the characters go, then any other downsides or whatever are a little bit more forgivable. Maybe there's some people out there who refuse to watch it because of the aesthetic, and I understand that, but I think those people are few and far between. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button. If you can, hit the like button too, because it helps out with the channel. Thank you.